ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Also, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any of my videos, as well as hitting that like button, because believe it or not, it takes a lot more than subscribing and hitting that notification bell to get notifications about every video. The more videos you like, the more you'll see videos just like this one, and it'll help this channel find more viewers like yourself. That said, we're going to be talking about Uncanny X-Men number 3, written by Gail Simone, with art by David Marquez, and colors by Matthew Wilson, with letters by Clayton Cowles. So this one, we get to learn a little bit more about the Hag, and not so much like anything like super duper mega descriptive, but we at least get to know a little bit more about her name, so we can call her something more than just the Hag. I mean, we knew her name was Sarah, and that was all well and good, but we know that she refers to herself as Sarah Gaunt. And what we learn about her is that she's not just dead set on destroying the X-Men, at least not yet. She doesn't seem to want to destroy them all outright. It seems she wants to do something a little bit more hurtful to Charles. She wants to dismantle them and make them hate Charles, which is kind of funny considering I don't know if she realizes her job has been largely done. Mutants by and large aren't particularly fond of Charles Xavier at this precise moment. Even his star pupils, everyone has found at least some modicum of fault in Charles Xavier over the years, and that was prior to the fall of X. Now he's a little bit more of a persona non grata style character, so I don't even think she has to work all that hard to accomplish her goal of getting Charles's former pupils to hate him. However, this is all what is kind of guiding her. She wants revenge on Charles, and it shouldn't be any surprise. Charles Xavier, by and large, has been one of probably the most prolific bad boyfriends in the history of Marvel Comics. There are definitely other characters who rank right up there with him, but he is, I would say, if he's not number one, he's at least top 5 dead or alive. Whatever the case is, the Hag, Sarah Gaunt, has made it very obvious to Dr. Ellis, at this point at the very least, she can't be controlled. Dr. Ellis was of the belief that she had this whole thing under lock and key. The Graymalkin prison was going to be safe from any kinds of treachery, whether it came from mutants or otherwise, but she has now learned that Sarah can get inside of the old Cerebro chambers where Charles is being kept. She can get in there whenever she wants, and she can let Charles go whenever she wants. But right now, she has other plans in motion, and the only reason Charles is not walking free right now is because she doesn't want him to. There's nothing Dr. Ellis can do to stop her, and that's really all there is to it. Dr. Ellis is going through one of those moments that we often see in comics where the bad guy is starting to realize maybe they're not as good a bad guy as they might have believed. They're not as smart as maybe they would have wanted to believe. No matter how much money they spend on all of their contingencies, it's not really going to matter at the end of the day, because there's always someone out there who is either A, more powerful than you could have imagined, or B, more resourceful than you could have imagined. And I'll even throw in a C, both. And I think Sarah actually falls into the C column on this equation. She's not only more powerful and resourceful than Dr. Ellis could have imagined, she also seems to have an ace up her sleeve that would make her, I would almost say, a nightmare for characters like Wolverine. Wolverine's been kind of going through it a little bit of, as of late. We've already seen in his own solo series that he's discovered that the adamantium he has in his body is not pure adamantium, as it seems that actual pure adamantium is now trying to run his fade and taking over one of his oldest rivals in that of Cyber. And now he's discovering that his fake adamantium, or rather his impure adamantium, can't even hold a candle to Sarah Gaunt. Sarah Gaunt has an ace up her sleeve, and that is what she refers to as somber steel. Her nails are literally forged from the blades of murderers. How that factors into all this and why it makes Her fingernails as strong as adamantium is another story altogether, but for whatever reason, this makes her claws incredibly durable, enough so that Wolverine, when he tries to slash at her, she can completely block his berserker barrages and not even take chip damage. To make matters worse, not only has she shown Wolverine that she has claws powerful enough to block his adamantium attacks, she is also proven she is quite capable of killing Wolverine, and we see this in this issue as she is using her power, using those same somber steel nails and impaling Wolverine with them and causing them to rend him, something we don't get to see actually play out, but we see the blood splatter and we know that Rogue is incredibly worried because she has a mental link with Wolverine, and that link, I don't remember exactly where it comes from, but basically, she has touched him enough times and uses power enough times. I imagine there's a lot of residual holdover from any of the time she has borrowed his memories and his powers. You could probably make a case for Rogue having this type of connection with a lot of different people who she is repeatedly taking powers from. Whatever the case is, this is all very likely what is going to galvanize Rogue to go after Sarah Gaunt. And she's going to need all the help she can get. They have the Eye of Agamotto. Gambit had acquired it in issue number 1. They're going to need all the magic mojo and backup that they can get. Because I'll tell you right now, if Sarah Gaunt has the ability to no-sell Wolverine's Berserker Barrage, then she will definitely be capable of no-selling just about anything, either Rogue, Gambit, or Nightcrawler, or even some of the Outliers, the new characters that have been introduced in this Uncanny X-Men series. She very likely will be able to no-sell their attacks as well. Speaking of the Outliers, one thing that's interesting about them this issue is that some of the stuff that I kind of posited and guessed at with these characters, just based on interviews I've seen Gail Simone give, and as well as other like little tidbits and things that have been brought up just in their first couple of appearances alone, pretty much everything we learn about them in this issue, that we get a little bit more of a backstory on each of them as characters. And for the most part, I was pretty spot on. So yeah, I won't really rehash any of it here. If you want to know more about my thoughts on how a lot of these characters came together, you can check it out right up here. Only real new information we get out of the Outliers as characters is that we learn when Jitter first gained her powers and when she first started learning how to manifest them, that at least on an active level, she accidentally permanently crippled one of her bullies, which, to be fair, I feel no sympathy for. It's still one of those things that it haunts her, and that is something we learn that kind of helps, I guess, kind of flesh out the character a little bit more. Ransom and Death Dream, we haven't learned anything new about them that we didn't already know. We do learn that Calico is probably of the 4 the most like out of touch, and that's largely just because of how she was raised. It's kind of difficult to judge her for the things that she has experienced. She is probably the one that we learn a bit more about that I wasn't expecting. We already know her parents were wealthy. We already knew that they were very overbearing. We already knew that they instilled a lot of anti-mutant sentiment in her, and even on some like religious level, like made her to believe that mutants are evil and are basically demons, more or less. And in here, we learn that they actually did a little bit more than that, that there's a point where Calico brings up that her mother locked her away in a cupboard for 4 days, which is child abuse to say the least. But yeah, all of that aside, this information about her is troubling because it just shows that even out of all these characters that have had pretty messed up childhoods, hers is objectively one of the worst ones. Like, her and Ransom both had pretty bad childhoods and pretty terrible parents. Even just the fact that it might even be implied she's slick responsible for the death of her parents. Her house burned down as a child, and she says that one day she just smelled smoke. And this is because her house is on fire and she doesn't warn anybody. She doesn't tell anybody. She just ups and leaves. Now, granted, I don't blame her for doing what she did. Her parents are terrible people, but at the end of the day, it's just, I don't know. I get vibes off of her that tell me she's probably one of the more broken ones. And kind of speaking of the broken ones, there was the prediction one of the Outliers was gonna break bad, and this book does a really good job of making you guess which one it might be. Well, yes, Calico I think is a very easy target. Like, she's a target-rich environment for pointing the finger at potentially being the one to break bad, just because she has grown up in such a way. I also feel like this is a prime opportunity for her to learn some things and maybe find some redemption. And it's also made even more sad by the fact that she's so out of touch with the world that, like, she looks at the people who, I'm assuming this is who she's talking about when she says to have the help make her a glass of lemonade. It's almost too easy to assume she's talking about Marcus and his family, the family that has taken in the X-Men at the Haven estate. And yeah, it's weird. That part was a little weird to me, but I think that was on purpose to just show you she doesn't know any better. And you almost can't even blame her for it, because if her parents taught her to be anti-mutant, I can only imagine what they taught her about how you treat people who do not look like you. So I think there's a lot to say there with that. Death Dream is the other character that's really easy to think is probably going to break bad, largely because he doesn't really understand what's going on around him as far as making friends and being nice to people. He seems to slip into his death state and just kind of go buck wild. There's a point where Rogue is trying to train the Outliers how to work as a team by using the old X-Belt. Something that is kind of a throwback to yesteryear, the old Westchester estate days of the X-Men, where you try to get the belt, and if you get the belt, you win. It shows you it's basically it's done in an effort to get everyone to work together as a team to accomplish a goal. And while no one really works as a team, it does bring some things out, and that's Death Dream's inability to control himself when he's in his death state. When he's in his death state, he's able, as I said before in the previous video, that he can control the undead and spirits and things of that nature. And it seems like whenever he lets those forces loose, he loses control to the point where he nearly kills Nightcrawler in what is supposed to be a friendly practice. And while he seems regretful, remorseful of it, it also lets you know that he is a prime target for someone to break bad. But I don't think it's going to be him either, though I do believe he possesses something that would make him a prime target for Sarah Gaunt than any of the other Outliers. All of that aside, I do also find one little other tidbit interesting. There's a point where I mentioned Marcus and his family earlier. He introduces us to his wife, Alice. He also introduces us to his daughter, Chelsea. And there's a point where Rogue, as she's narrating this comic, she brings up that she notices something about Chelsea. She doesn't say what it is, but it becomes very clear in a comic, series where people randomly, can be born with special powers and abilities. You can probably guess what it is Rogue may or may not have noticed, but the point is, she says there's something about the girl. And it's in the very next panel where Marcus looks at Rogue and says, "Don't you be putting any letters on my girl's clothes." And that is what I feel is a pretty clear reference to the fact that they are X-Men. He doesn't want his daughter getting roped in to whatever the X-Men are up to. Almost kind of implying back that, even though technically Rogue didn't say anything out loud, Marcus is saying, hey, don't get any ideas about my kid. Kind of a finger poking at a couple of different things. One being the fact that, the X-Men, even now, I'm not going to even say used to, they still do. They would recruit children to join their ranks. I mean, granted, there's this whole child soldier component to the X-Men I think a lot of people like to ignore. But at the same time, he's also saying, don't get any ideas about my kid. And I feel like Marcus wouldn't get that impression if his child was human. Like, I feel like if his child was human, if Chelsea was a human child, there would not be any, idea of, don't go trying to get her to join your little team or whatever. I feel like people are aware enough about what mutants are, who mutants are, that they are aware that it would only be a mutant who would be, put on that team. Unless you're Juggernaut. Unless you're Juggernaut. That's a whole other story altogether. I'm curious to know what's up with Chelsea. Like I said, we don't know. I feel like that once again, it's going to be one of those things that's pie in the sky. We're not going to get any answers about that anytime terribly soon, but I can't wait to see it. I look forward to seeing how it all goes. I think it could be pretty cool. I think it'd be interesting if the family that is effectively giving sanctuary to the Uncanny X-Men. It would be nice to know a little bit more about them and who they are, and maybe why Marcus has skin in the game on this. It would be interesting to know. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.